Think about all the rules you follow on land. You can open a window whenever you want. You don't need permission to come home late. You don't wear your house key around your neck like a credit card. Now imagine a place where none of that applies. And somehow, it actually makes more sense. Cruise ships do things that would feel completely ridiculous on land. But the moment you're at sea, those same rules suddenly feel logical, even smart. From leaving your wallet behind all day, to being told where you're allowed to stand, to rules that exist only because you're floating in the middle of the ocean. These are 10 things you can do on a cruise ship that you can't do on land, and why they just make sense. Stay until the end, because one of these surprises almost every first-time cruiser. If you're ready, hit the like button, comment cruise for you, and let's jump straight in. Number 1. Leaving your wallet behind all day. On land, leaving home without your wallet would feel stressful. You'd be checking your pockets, worrying about paying for food, or wondering what happens if something goes wrong. On a cruise ship, it's the opposite. Once you're on board, your wallet almost disappears from your life, and that's actually by design. Your cruise card becomes everything. It unlocks your cabin, tracks your spending, and acts as your onboard ID. You can walk to breakfast, grab a coffee, hit the pool, order lunch, sign up for activities, and even book a show, all without touching cash or pulling out a credit card. That would feel risky on land. On a cruise ship, it just makes sense. The ship is a closed system. Every purchase is logged to your account, every card is linked to you, and if you lose it, the crew can shut it off instantly. It's one of the few places where leaving your wallet behind doesn't make you careless. It actually makes life easier. And once you get used to it, going back to normal life feels strangely inconvenient. Number 2. Carrying one card that's your key, ID, and money. On land, the idea of one card doing everything would feel risky. Your house key is separate. Your ID is separate. Your bank card is separate. Lose one, and it's already a headache. On a cruise ship, everything is combined, and it works surprisingly well. That single cruise card unlocks your cabin door, lets you board and exit the ship, proves who you are to crew, and pays for everything from drinks to souvenirs. You don't have to think about pockets, handbags, or where you left things. You just grab the card and go. That wouldn't fly on land. But on a cruise, it makes sense because the ship is a controlled environment. Every swipe is tracked. Every door access is logged. If the card is lost, it can be canceled and replaced in minutes. It's faster, safer, and far more practical when thousands of people are moving around the same space all day. By the end of the cruise, most people realize something unexpected. This system feels easier than real life. Before we keep going, quick heads up. There's a bonus section at the end with a couple of cruise secrets most people don't know about. Number 3. Strict boarding times. And the ship really will leave without you. On land, if you're late getting back to a hotel, nothing happens. The building doesn't move, the room doesn't disappear. On a cruise ship, being late has real consequences. Every port visit runs on a tight schedule. The ship is given a specific departure window, and missing it can mean fines, lost port access, and major delays down the line. That's why cruise ships don't wait. If the all-aboard time is 6 o'clock, that's not a suggestion. It's a hard deadline. On land, that would feel harsh. At sea, it makes sense. The ship has fuel plans, tide schedules, and the next port already lined up. Waiting for a handful of late passengers could throw off an entire itinerary. That's also why crew constantly remind guests of the time, and why you'll sometimes see people sprinting down the pier at the last second. It's not about being strict for the sake of it. It's about keeping thousands of people on schedule, in the middle of the ocean. Number 4. Mandatory safety drills before you're allowed to relax. On land, hotels don't make you stop everything to learn emergency procedures. You check in, drop your bags, and that's it. On a cruise ship, the first thing you're required to do is a safety drill, even before you fully settle in. At first, it can feel annoying. You're excited, you want to explore the ship, and instead you're being told where to go and what to watch. But at sea, this rule makes total sense. If something goes wrong on land, help is minutes away. On a cruise ship, help could be hours, or even days, away. Everyone on board needs to know where their muster station is, how to get there, and what to do without panic. That includes kids, first-time cruisers, and people who never read instructions. Doing this on day 1 means no confusion later, no guessing, no chaos. On land, a mandatory drill for every hotel guest would feel over the top. On a cruise ship, it's one of the smartest rules there is. Number 5. security screening just to re-enter home. On land, you don't go through metal detectors or scanners to enter your hotel. Once you're staying there, that's it. On a cruise ship, every time you leave the ship and come back, you go through security again. At first, that can feel excessive. You've already checked in. You already belong there. But at sea, this rule makes complete sense. Every port visit means stepping into a new country with different laws, different risks, and different security standards. When passengers return, the ship has no choice but to treat re-entry seriously. Security checks help prevent prohibited items, keep everyone safe on board, and protect the ship itself. And because the ship is both transport and accommodation, the rules are stricter than a normal hotel. On land, this would feel invasive. On a cruise ship, it's a necessary layer of protection, and one that most people quickly accept. Number 6. Limited food hours, even though food feels endless. On land, if you're hungry, you just find something to eat. Restaurants open late, room service runs all night, and convenience stores are everywhere. On a cruise ship, food feels like it's everywhere, yet certain venues still close at specific times. At first, that feels strange. How can a place known for endless food suddenly have limits? But on a cruise ship, it actually makes sense. Every meal is planned, every kitchen is timed. Thousands of dishes have to be prepared, served, cleaned, and reset over and over again. Closing times allow crew to restock, sanitize, and prepare for the next rush. Without those breaks, service quality would drop fast. On land, strict food hours would feel unnecessary. At sea, they're the only way to keep food safe, fresh, and running smoothly for thousands of guests. Number 7. Crew living and working in the same place for months. On land, living where you work would feel exhausting. Most people need a clear line between their job and their home. On a cruise ship, crew members live on board for months at a time, sometimes close to a year. At first, that sounds extreme. No commute, no weekends at home, no stepping away from the workplace. But at sea, this setup makes sense. The ship operates 24 hours a day. Restaurants, engines, navigation, cleaning, entertainment, none of it stops. Having crew live on board means problems can be handled immediately. There's always someone available, no matter the time or situation. On land, this would feel unhealthy. On a cruise ship, it's how the entire floating city keeps running without interruption. Number 8. Being told where to stand or asked to spread out. On land, if someone told you to move because too many people were standing in one spot, it would feel ridiculous. A building doesn't tilt just because a crowd gathers near a window. On a cruise ship, it's a different story. When large groups of people move to one side of the ship during sail away, scenic cruising, fireworks, or wildlife sightings, the combined weight can actually affect the ship's balance. Modern ships can correct this, but sudden crowd shifts still matter. Even a small list can slosh pools, move loose furniture, and make some passengers feel uncomfortable. That's why crew may ask people to spread out or temporarily close parts of a deck. It's not about control. It's about keeping the ship stable and comfortable for everyone. On land, this rule would make no sense. On a cruise ship, it absolutely does. Number 9. The ship controls power, water, waste, and food. On land, if one company controlled your electricity, water, garbage, food supply, and security all at once, it would feel unsettling. You'd expect choices, backups, alternatives. On a cruise ship, there are none, and that's exactly why it works. Everything on board is managed by the ship itself. Power is generated on board. Fresh water is made on board. Waste is processed on board. Food is stored, prepared, and tracked on board. This level of control wouldn't make sense on land. At sea, it's essential. There are no nearby utilities to fall back on. If something fails, the ship has to fix it immediately, without outside help. That's why cruise ships operate more like small cities than hotels. And once you realize that, a lot of cruise rules suddenly make sense. Number 10. Not being allowed to open balcony doors whenever you want. On land, opening a balcony door or window is normal. If you want fresh air, you just slide it open. On a cruise ship, that freedom disappears, and it can feel strange at first. Balcony doors are tightly controlled, and on some ships, opening them at the wrong time can even trigger alarms or shut down air systems. On land, that would feel ridiculous. At sea, it makes complete sense. Cruise ships rely on carefully balanced air pressure systems. Opening balcony doors can disrupt airflow, strain the ship's air conditioning, and even cause doors to slam dangerously because of strong ocean winds. There's also safety to consider. High winds, sudden gusts, and movement from waves make open balconies far riskier than they appear. So while it might feel restrictive, this rule exists to protect the ship, the systems that keep it comfortable, and the people on board. On land, this rule would never fly. On a cruise ship, it just makes sense. Before we wrap up, this is the bonus section I mentioned earlier. These aren't opinions, rumors, or scare stories. They're real cruise ship realities that most passengers never think about, and cruise lines don't exactly advertise. Nothing here is meant to ruin cruising. But once you know these, you'll understand cruise ships very differently. Let's get into the cruise secrets most people don't hear about. Bonus Secret 1. The ship already knows where you are at all times. Most passengers think their cruise card is just a room key and a way to pay for things. In reality, it's one of the most important safety tools on the ship. Every time you tap that card to open your cabin door, board or exit the ship, buy a drink, enter a show, or check in at a venue, the system quietly logs it. Not just the purchase, but the exact location and the time it happened. You never see this information, but it's always there in the background. This isn't about watching people for no reason. It's about control in an environment where help isn't close. If there's an emergency, crew can quickly see who was where and when. If someone doesn't return from a port, card data helps narrow down the last confirmed movement. If something serious happens on board, timelines can be reconstructed without relying on memory alone. On land, this level of tracking would feel uncomfortable. You'd question it immediately. At sea, it quietly keeps thousands of people safe without most of them ever realizing it's happening. That's why cruise ships don't rely on guesswork. They rely on data. Bonus Secret 2. The buffet closes early on purpose, even if food is left. One of the strangest things for first-time cruisers is seeing a buffet close while there's still food sitting there. On land, that feels wrong. If food is available, you serve it. You don't just shut the doors. On a cruise ship, it works very differently. Buffet food isn't kept out until it's gone. It's kept out until it reaches a strict time limit. Once that window closes, much of that food can't legally be served again, even if it looks untouched. That rule isn't about saving money or rushing guests out. It's about food safety in a place where getting seriously sick is a much bigger problem than it would be on land. At sea, there's no nearby hospital, no quick ambulance ride. If a foodborne illness spreads on board, it can affect hundreds of people very quickly, so the ship plays it safe. Food is rotated, removed, and discarded on schedule. Buffets close so kitchens can be cleaned, surfaces sanitized, and the next service prepared properly. On land, this would feel wasteful and unnecessary. On a cruise ship, it's one of the quiet rules that protects everyone, even if it doesn't always look that way. Bonus Secret 3. The ship can change your itinerary without compensation. Most passengers book a cruise thinking the ports are locked in. You picture each stop, plan excursions, and build expectations around those destinations. It feels solid, almost guaranteed. But at sea, itineraries are always flexible, even if they look fixed on paper. Cruise contracts give the ship broad authority to change routes, skip ports, or replace them with sea days. Weather, mechanical issues, political situations, or even congestion at a port can all trigger changes. When that happens, compensation isn't automatic. For many people, this is the most surprising part. Missing a port feels like losing part of what you paid for. On land, canceling a major part of a trip would usually come with refunds or rebooking options. At sea, the priority is safety and navigation, not promises made months earlier. That's why experienced cruisers often say the same thing. You don't book a cruise for the ports alone, you book it for the ship itself. Once you understand that, itinerary changes stop feeling personal and start feeling like part of ocean travel. Bonus Secret 4. Crew cabins are monitored more than passenger areas. Most passengers assume the ship is watching them. Cameras in hallways, cameras in public spaces. Quiet monitoring everywhere guests go. What surprises many people is that the opposite is often true. Passenger areas are designed with comfort and privacy in mind. Crew-only areas are designed for control, safety, and accountability. Crew members live on board for months at a time. The ship isn't just their workplace, it's their home, their accommodation, and their responsibility. Because of that, Maritime rules around crew behavior, safety, and conduct are extremely strict. Monitoring in crew areas helps prevent serious issues before they escalate. It ensures safety standards are followed, disputes are managed, and emergencies are responded to quickly. It also protects crew members themselves in an environment where personal space is limited and stress levels can run high. Passengers rarely see this side of ship life. Everything feels relaxed, friendly, and informal on the surface. Behind the scenes, operations are tightly controlled, not to punish, but to keep the entire floating city running smoothly. On land, this level of monitoring would feel excessive. At sea, it's one of the systems that keeps order where there's no outside help to step in. Last bonus secret. In rare cases, the ship may not turn back if someone is missing. This is the hardest one to talk about, and it's also the one most people never consider until they hear it. If someone is reported missing on a cruise ship, the crew takes it seriously immediately. Searches begin, systems are checked, and authorities are notified. That part is not optional. What many passengers don't realize is that whether a ship turns back depends on one critical thing: timing. If it's clear when and where someone went missing, turning back can help. But if there's no confirmed time, no camera footage, or no clear location, turning the ship around may not actually increase the chances of finding anyone. At sea, hours matter. Distance matters. Ocean conditions matter. Turning a massive ship around isn't like making a U-turn in a car. It affects fuel, navigation safety, crew operations, and thousands of other passengers. In some cases, turning back can even create additional risks. That's why these decisions are made under maritime law, not emotion. Authorities look at evidence, timelines, and probabilities, then decide what action makes sense. It's rare, it's unsettling, but it's real. On land, emergencies are local and immediate. At sea, every decision carries weight far beyond one moment. And understanding that reality changes how people see cruising forever.